Maybe 15 plus years ago in my career, I had just moved from Warner Brothers Entertainment to the Walt Disney Company, and I was leading recruitment for what was then known as the Interactive Division. And I was still learning a lot about technology talent and how to best attract and compete for that type of talent. So I was cutting my teeth on a lot of things, and my leader at the time had set up a meeting with our chief technology officer of that division at the time, and this was the first time I was going to be meeting him. I was really, excited. I had thought about what I was going to wear this, crisp, like white button down shirt, get into the meeting, and my nerves just took over, and I just started sweating, like, not just a little, like a lot. And I mean, I'm a sweater anyway, but it was like dripping, very visual, like trying to wipe my upper lip and my brow as like the sweat is just soaking through my shirt. So needless to say, that was a very, very embarrassing. And the chief technology officer at the time afterwards had asked my leader, are we sure she's the right person? She seems a little nervous, um, and we ended up actually really, and I say we, myself and my team, ended up really turning things around and delivering for the business in a really big way. And my leader said to me at the time, um, like, be confident in what you're bringing to the table. Like, know your voice is just as important as anyone else's. Don't look at someone based on their level. Like, look at them as a human being first, level second, and think more about the conversation and what you know. Admit what you don't know, but be confident in what you do know. And I was like, I know we know how to compete for this type of talent. So it ultimately ended up being a pretty valuable lesson for me to sort of trust in myself, but it was pretty embarrassing at the time.
I love it. No, and actually, it's like think about how many people you interviewed. That's the nice thing. And you carry this memory, and it's really humbling to just remember yourself in their position and how stressed they are and how do they think about their appearance, what they wear, just to meet you for like a brief 30 minutes or something. And I think it's a very humbling and valuable lesson for us as human beings. So
Yeah, and I think especially earlier in your career, but I mean, at any point in your career, I feel like we've all had those moments where we say like, am I supposed to be here? Am I qualified to be here? Am I making, um, am I saying the right things? Am I doing the right things? And it's just about making the decision to get out of your head, be present in the conversation, know that you have confidence in what you can bring, and be open about what you don't know. So anyway, it was a great lesson for me at that point.
We've all had imposter syndrome, but I want to thank you for that's, admitting that you were like flop sweating in a first meeting is pretty bold. So well done. Hello and welcome. I'm Karen Rosenfeld here with Omer Glass, Growth Space's CEO, and today's guest is Sarah Tilley. And Sarah is a global talent leader with over 20 years of experience at companies like the Walt Disney Company and Warner Brothers. And currently, she's the Senior Vice President of Global Talent Acquisition and Development Management at ServiceNow. Welcome, Sarah. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, truly.
Now let's pivot into happier memories and into some story. Like if you could choose for me a success story, something that you really sort of hang your hat on and say, wow, I'm really proud of the work we did. Tell me a little bit of background information, what you were up against, and how you were ultimately able to be so successful.
Yeah, I'm going to tell a story about a program and a strategy that I'm pretty proud of, and that my team deserves a tremendous amount of credit for, and especially one by the name of Natalie Bodis, who's on my team, who's been the brainchild of this. But I would point to the evolution of our performance development strategy at ServiceNow, and we have a very high functioning a high achieving culture, like most organizations, and we're always looking at what can we do to fuel the next stage of growth for the company. And it wasn't that long ago where we really, I would say we had a combination of some outdated performance development practices and then also a lack of a clear connected framework. It was almost like we were sort of moving forward with some tactics in lieu of a connected strategy. So what we did was we decided in a very short period of time to stand up a different approach and move away from some really, unclear performance criteria and standards. We used a 9-box assessment tool to a new rating scale, formalized the evaluation process, created more objective assessment criteria, and made sure that the performance process was way more transparent. So we instituted regular quarterly conversations, which is again a no-brainer, but it's we really didn't have the mechanisms in place for these conversations to be happening, for people to be accountable to them on the leadership side, and for employees to be getting what they wanted. And then also, how do we equip leaders with what they need to have these conversations, and how do we help them manage those that whose performance isn't where it needs to be? So, and a lot tighter link between performance and compensation. We have a mid-year bonus, and then we also have our annual compensation planning as well. And so it has greatly improved. We haven't, we're not done. We haven't nailed every aspect of this by any means. This is always going to be an ongoing thing. How do we get better at helping people elevate their performance or turn around their performance? How do we help managers understand their role in that? How do we help them equip them with what they need to lean it in? We literally just got off a call about some ways to make the process more efficient, more smooth, but just the amount of time that we went from this sort of vague approach that really didn't differentiate for performance. So we had a lot of people that either thought they were performing great, but just had no insight into whether they were or weren't. Or we had individuals that were at varying degrees in their performance that wasn't working for where we needed to go as a company. And we used our own technology and platform to develop the tools to support performance, which was amazing. So again, a lot further along in connecting all the different elements of the process to make it easier, clearer, and now we're 100% bringing in AI to simplify the experience. But I'm pretty proud of that. And again, uh, not because it's perfect, but because we saw a need, we developed a plan, we put it into place, and we saw some results really quickly, like within the first few months. So.
How much time did it take you to design and develop the program, like the performance evaluation?
We had months. Like we had like I'm not going to get this exactly right, but I think we did it like within 3 months. I mean, again, for a company with now 25,000 employees globally, it just the amount of time that we put something into place, and we leveraged. Um, we don't claim to have all the answers, so we looked at a lot, like what are the companies that we respect and admire, what are they doing, how can we take from that information, talk to a lot of our industry peers, our customers, and looked at what we could do on our own platform. And so it was record speed.
I think that's maybe now we can wrap up the episode because I think it's a good enough learning. I'm just kidding, but no, because it takes so much time to get things off the ground. And that's why I asked this question, because from knowing you a little bit, I knew that it's going to be very fast, but I thought it would like you was going to tell me like 6 months or something. So I think it takes so
Now, we
much
were
time
not
to do
talking
things.
about it first. What was that, Omar?
No, it takes so much time to design things, to just launch things, and the truth is, most of the learning happens after you launch it. So it's not perfect, but at least it's out there. You did something, you took a step, you were bold. Now it's out there, and then you can create the next version. But I think again, for Fortune 500s to launch performance evaluation in 3 months is unheard of. I never heard of anything like that. So that's really
I
inspiring.
do think Thank you. And we were talking about it for months before that, but the actual like digging in and standing something up was really quick. And I love the way you just framed that up too, because I think, what we call a product mindset, we're not the only organization that uses that terminology, obviously, but it is really about exactly what you said. How do you just get started, iterate, learn, apply that? That is not what a lot of global fortune companies are accustomed to doing. And so more and more, just with the speed of technology and now with AI changing everything, I do think that organizations and even HR, learning and development organizations are starting to realize speed is the competitive advantage. And if you wait until you get everything perfect, by the time you finalize something, there's a new piece of technology, or there's a new like a lever that you can leverage that has changed what you initially even started to design. And so you just have to lean into that. And I know it's culturally very different in an organization that's been around since 2004. We don't have 50, 60 years under our belt. So culturally, our employees are a little more used to it. But I think you see more and more HR organizations leaning in saying, we've just got to we've got to try, we've got to iterate, we've got to put something out, we got to pilot, we got to let pilots actually pilot, learn and do those things. And I think that's the future of our function.
What's been the biggest learning from setting this up for you?
Well, I do think that to that point on how do you move fast and fix things, to quote one of my favorite sort of authors and speakers, Francis Fry. Everyone is going to have a perspective. Everyone's going to bring their experience from a previous organization, or they've read a white paper, or especially in the space of HR and learning and development. It's a very personal thing, like, how people think about their own performance, or how they think about growing and learning. And so they're going to bring their own very personal experience. And so if you're waiting for consensus, it will never happen. And so you have to be really grounded in data, the latest data that you have, because that data is going to change. But, be equipped with and be confident in your business case for, this is why we're doing this now. Acknowledge the feedback, acknowledge the perspectives and the opinions, but just say, you got to help us. We're going to give this a try. But and we need everyone aligned as we try things out. And that again requires sort of a cultural cohesion on things. I literally was just having a conversation last week on this topic of performance. We're looking at, again, evolving some things constantly. How do we make it even more simple and connected? And I was having a conversation internally. I was like, we need your support and helping to get socialize this with the business, that this is what we're gonna do for now. And it's not carved in stone. We're gonna continue to iterate, but I think everyone's gonna have an opinion, and you have to be, almost like comfortable hearing the good opinion of others, but not letting it whipsaw you around in terms of your approach. Things have to marinate for a little while in order to get the insights to inform where you go next.
A follow-up question on performance. Sorry. So a lot of organizations, they do the performance evaluation one way or another, whether it's the 9 box or a very advanced AI. So you understand what you need to be better at, but how do you do that? So there is the next step of basically, okay, you understand you need to improve on a skill, or you have a gap in your performance or something like that. And then how do you support them? So let's say you understand what they need. How do you take the next step and actually make the difference in their actual performance?
I think you and I have like even touched on this in like just informal conversations we've had. I do not think you can do it at scale without a skills intelligence platform. Period. You can't do it. You can't, because I think we've been trying in HR for so long to do it without AI. and without Gen AI, and it becomes a very manual, like clunky process that gets outdated very quickly. So if you want to serve up a personalized, custom, appropriate, sort of recommendations or path, if you will, um, then you have to use technology, you have to use skills intelligence. And I think that's where it's a combination. So for us in our learning and development strategy, we use the 4E approach, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Which is obviously there's a formal education component of that, but there's also exposure and there's also experience that someone needs to have. And then there's how do you measure whether or not they're actually developing those skills, the knowledge. And to do that at scale, you really do need the system to support it. So if I say, okay, Omar, like my aspiration is to get your job, so let's say you're president of one of our business segments inside the organization. So then I have to be able to quantify everything in a system that we have to have captured what are the experiences and skills that you need to get to President Omar's position. And then here are the ways in which you acquire that. Is it through this formal education? Is it through taking on, this type of work to get more exposure in this area? It is a combination of things that get served up that will have to be initiated in multiple ways. But I think the quantification of and doing it at scale is through a system solution.
Amazing. All right. So now we'll take a turn. Let's talk about a situation in which maybe there was a less than successful outcome professionally, but I want to focus not just on what didn't work, but the lessons you learned ultimately from that failure or near miss.
Yeah, I'll think about again when I was leading the technology talent management strategy at Disney across all of our businesses. So it's a very vast portfolio of businesses that sit under that umbrella that span across multiple industries, whether it be consumer products or cruise lines or television or film or streaming or games, etc. I mean, they're very distinct industries and verticals, but there's a connected tissue across all. And I really what we had learned from hiring technologists across the organization was that while there were some nuances, there were a lot of things, especially before a technologist becomes a deep specialist, earlier in their career, there was a lot of transferable skills and education that could be leveraged across the company, and also that we could help accelerate how the experience, the skills and the knowledge. So again, it's sort of what you see in consulting, right? So if you have someone who's done a rotation across multiple clients in the consulting world, that can accelerate their, what they know, what they learn, what they've seen, because it is so, the types of the size of the company you're working with, the industry that you're working with, the players that you're working with, the culture. So we had all of that within one organization. So and we were hiring a lot of experienced technologists, but less so that could come in and contribute earlier in their career. So I thought, okay, we'll just stand up like a rotational program and we'll hire these rock stars in, that can rotate across our different businesses. We'll benefit from the talent that and the recent sort of academic knowledge that they bring, and then we'll accelerate their development. And I think I thought this is just such a clear, obvious, like tactic that will help us, sort of balance the levels that we're hiring and get us some earlier in career talent, which has the obvious benefits. And we put it into place, and we had a couple of rotations, but it really didn't get to the root cause, which was that we had to understand how to leverage technologists that didn't have a ton of experience in a specific vertical. So we had to organize the work in a way that would allow us to benefit from that type of talent. And we also had to have the handoffs across these very divergent businesses, be smooth and strengthen the connection between those. We got there in different ways, but that wasn't it. That was not, that wasn't the solution. It really was, I think, more complex in terms of understanding what are the needs of the organization? How do we organize the work in a way that allows us to hire for, the segmented type of talent that can benefit those needs? And how do we strengthen the connection with these brilliant strategists and technology strategists and leaders at all levels so that they understand it, not that we are just moving someone tactically from one group to another. So eventually we made a tremendous amount of progress, and Disney always solves for itself. It's a phenomenal company with just the smartest people that are incredibly collaborative. So it was again, it was like, as so many things on its face, it was like, okay, we need more of this. Okay, we'll just build this and it will solve for that. No problem. But I think really spending more time on the front end, analyzing the complexities behind what the needs were was a learning for me.
But actually, it connects to your first story because when you launch fast like has its own benefits and also disadvantages. So yeah, you could theoretically analyze everything. And like in your first example of the new performance evaluation system you launched in 3 months, you could have analyzed the needs better, but then you wouldn't have it out in 3 months, so you wouldn't learn from like whatever happened in reality. Because until you have the data, you just do not know. You assume, right? So I think it's a good learning and it's part of the process.
Yeah, I think that's a good tie-in too. Sometimes you have to, you have to fail fast, as they say, right?
Another thing that again, in the prep call we talked about, and this is the only once that I really liked is I'm quoting you. So it's like no one will remember, and you can correct me if I didn't get it 100% right, but they will not remember like how much you paid. They will for something. You will remember the impact you created. Right. So once we met and like you said it to me, and it kind of like stuck because we're so focused sometimes on like how much it costs and like resources and stuff like that, but eventually we're after the impact. So I'm just curious about maybe the origin of this Sarah Tilley quote and how do you apply it?
Thank- I joked that I'm sure some of my leaders would love hearing that, but it's not to say that I don't uh that I don't recognize, and I recognize it more than ever now, the need to balance fiscal responsibility with what you're trying to drive. You actually can't operate not just at my level, but many clicks below me. And something that my leaders and I talk about quite a bit. It's like, especially again as a fast growing tech company, we're fortunate to be able to make investments at this moment that we may not be able to make in the future, or we haven't been able to make in the past. But we have to always demonstrate that we're being fiscally responsible. But at the end of the day, I think it is something that if I'm order ranking things in my mind, and if I can save $1 versus make a greater impact with that dollar, then I will choose that. So that's sort of because I have seen that there that you will stall, you will plateau professionally if you aren't fiscally responsible and if you aren't also always looking for efficiencies. There's no question about that. But you're going to stall a lot faster and a lot harder and a lot, and a lot bigger if you're not driving the results. And so how do you find the way to make the investments in order to drive the value and the results? Again, when I think about how I order rank things, that always goes to the top.
All right. Okay. That's it. We've come to the final question. So now let's look back a second. If you could look back and sort of coach your younger self, what would you tell yourself when you're first sort of up and coming? What advice would you give to yourself? What skills would you tell yourself to focus on?
I've talked to some of our early in career talent about this because I've been asked this question, and it allowed me to reflect a little bit. And this is advice I probably am still giving to myself, which sort of sounds um maybe counterintuitive, especially as you're thinking about how do I achieve my career aspirations? How do I grow? How do I promote? How do I, become more visible? How do I elevate? But my advice, especially to a younger me, would have been to not uh, aspire to have every moment be productive. That it is really about creating the space for, your own mental care, giving prioritization and attention to those things that matter to you in life beyond your work. I mean, for me, it's family, it's my, chosen family, my friends, it's my community, it's work, it's also my health, it's, you know, my charitable organizations, it's all of the things um that matter to me a whole lot and keep me sane. And then just creating sort of space to think. I find that when I'm not just working to be productive every minute of every single day, and I'm a getting things done addict. There's no question about that. I love the dopamine hit. All day long. Um, but I find that I'm a better human being, that I'm more creative, that I can like listen, be present, be empathetic, see other people's points of view, create space for new ideas if I am allowing myself to be less productive, at times. So, and I'm still working on that, but I definitely wish I would have at least attempted to work on it many years earlier in my life.
Oh, that's awesome. I think, I think a lot of us are sort of born to just check things off of boxes and love making lists, very type A, and like want to go up and up and up and up. But then I think all of us kind of can look back and go, wow, I just missed out on all of these, like my youth, because I've just been working. And if you don't take that step back and sort of appreciate the other things, I think that's great advice that, that you have to at least attempt to find that balance. Otherwise, you're going to have a great career path, but nothing else to sort of fall back on. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. This has been super interesting, a little embarrassing, and just a lovely conversation.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you too for having me be a part of this. It's been an absolute pleasure. We love working with you and your organization, and really grateful for the partnership overall. So thank you. Thanks for having me as a part of this.